Thank you, everyone, for tuning into yet another episode in which I talk about issues related to public transportation. Now, I'm gonna somewhat repeat something that I streamed about in November for two reasons. The less important one is that that was more than 3 months ago, and we've done further work since, Devin and I. The more important reason is that the recording did not work 3 months ago. It cut out after a couple of minutes. As a result, this was never uploaded. So, to do something that can actually be uploaded, I'm gonna just go back into it. Actually, there's also a third reason, which is on Discord. People were saying things about Northeast Corridor scheduling that are some of them are true, some of them are not, and I kind of want to get back into let's call it the basics. So let's talk about it in the sense of the basics. So the red route that you're seeing is called the Northeast Corridor. It's not literally the route because this route has some deviations that we're going to discuss. Some of them we're going to discuss, but the deviations are for the most part small. There's one big exception, which is the route between New Haven. No, that's not even. No, yeah, it is. The route between New Haven and Kingston, so, is new. Kingston to Boston, it's all pre-existing. I think there's only one deviation, which is this curve. It's already one of the widest curves on the route. It it's radius 1746 meters. If you're wondering why such a number, it's the way Americans measure curve radius on trains. It's not metric, and it's not even metric but with English units, so they don't usually say radius x feet. This is not going to be a nice number in feet, but this is every 100 feet of track correspond to a single degree of change in azimuth. So if you multiply by pi and do it in feet, I guess that's a rather even number, or divide by 60 or something. And so, but anyway, so Americans think in terms of degrees. 1 degree is 1746. 2 degrees is half of that. This is 1 degree, and because I never remember the numbers, this is about the maximum you can get. So if you're wondering, the formula for speed on curves is lateral acceleration in meters per second squared times radius in meters equals square of speed in meters per second. You do it this way, the dimensional analysis works. 2.07 is about the highest number that exists on high-speed rail lines. It exists in Germany between Frankfurt and Köln. This is not a line that's atypical in its infrastructure, other than it permits higher speeds on curves in order to reduce tunneling costs, which are already kind of significant. It's a hilly area and very also densely developed, so very constrained. The population density of North Rhine-Westphalen is rather high. And so this is about the maximum you can get at high speeds. You can go a little bit higher. We're using 2.2 at low speeds, which save a ton of time. And a ton, a non-trivial percentage, let's call it that way. And if you have tilting trains, you can get away with more, but tilting, most high-speed trains don't tilt. You're restricting your market for rolling stock. So let's do this number, 2.07, get this, and then we do it for the beginning because I accidentally hit the backspace while doing this. So yeah, this is the current speed that could be done on this line if you maximize everything. I don't remember what speed the trains are currently rated at on this line. I think it's less than that because the super elevation is a little bit lower. But not much less. Maybe it's 200 kilometers an hour, something like that. This is between sections that are like 300 kilometers an hour plus, and this is not a densely developed area, southern Rhode Island, so here you do want to straighten the curve. Also, another thing about straightening curves is that not all curve straightenings cost the same, like in terms of physical infrastructure. I will answer about tilting in one moment, Sunny. That is, and my internet is not very fast, because I live in Germany, and the issue with this is that because this is already a wide curve, it's something that took me a while to appreciate, but in theory you want to, in theory, in general, you want to speed up the slowest sections first. It's much more important to turn a 30 kilometers an hour section into 50 than to turn 200 into 350. And it's not even close. That said, if it's a curve that's already pretty wide and you're widening it further, note that there's quite a lot of separation between these curves. So you start building this curve here and you don't disturb the existing route. This matters because when you have this separation, it's easier to build than when you don't have any. Because then you'd need to move tracks during construction, and that's hard. So anyway, this is a deviation from the route. Otherwise, it's called the Northeast Corridor. Amtrak runs different trains on it. Some of them are called Acela Express and are not very fast. They're about as fast or slightly slower than trains in Germany that are technically high speed but don't actually run on high speed lines, like Berlin to Köln. Much slower than trains that do run on high speed lines, like Berlin to München or Frankfurt to Köln, things like that. And is supremely expensive. I believe ticket fare on the Acela averages per kilometer about 5 times as much. The average here is about 11 euro cents per kilometer, about 15 US cents per kilometer, give or take. PPP terms, I believe the Acela, okay, I said 5 times and that's wrong, it's probably 3. I believe the Acela is 50 something, like 53 cents per kilometer. Then there are the slower trains, the even slower trains, the ones that instead of doing this 360 kilometer section in 3:45 or 4 hours and this in 2:50, I think they do this in maybe 4:20 or something like that, and this in about 3:20, 3:30. And to be clear, at Berlin to Köln speeds, this is a little less than 3, and this is a little less than 3. So the regionals are a separate train for like market segmentation, which is stupid, and we're going to get into that in a bit. And instead of charging 3 times as much, or 3.5 times as much as German or French trains, probably charge about twice as much. Okay. Alright, Sunny, you were asking me about tilting. Tilting is a possibility. What tilting does is this number, the 2.07, it's the sum of 2 numbers. One is called cant, or super elevation, which is how much you're tilting how much you're moving the tracks to be, maybe you can see this with the lines. You can see maybe you can see the cant here, that the outside rail is higher than the inside rail. It's kind of subtle. Or here maybe you can see how the train is slanted. So this is the entire train, so this is super elevation or cant. It can be, usually it's expressed in units of millimeters of how high the outer rail is over the inner rail. The gauge is, not in Japan, but in the US, in most of the world, it's 1.435 meters. Inside to inside, you want to compare it with middle to middle, which is about 1.5 meters. So about 150 millimeters are 1 meter per second square, is the conversion. Now you will run the train faster than perfect balancing speed in what is called cant efficiency. Usually cant efficiency is given the same units, but it's really a lateral acceleration number. About the maximum you should ever do on a non-tilting train is 1 meter per second squared. And you should go much lower than that, like 0.8 or something like that, on a high-speed train. So 150 millimeters cant efficiency at low and medium speed, 130 at high speed. maybe even 1/10 very high speed. The way the 2.07 is because the cant is 180, which is the maximum in Germany. Dedicated high-speed track. You don't want the cant to be too high because if the train stops on the track, then it's overcanted. So you want a line that's sufficiently reliable that it's not going to happen. So it's usually a dedicated high-speed line. 180 plus 130 is 310, which is 310 divided by 250 is 2.07. That's a computation. Okay. Okay. So yeah. Now you can tilt the train. So this is not. I don't think this is a tilting train. But so a tilting train is not the same as like canting the curve. It means that the train itself has a mechanism that leads to more tilting. So the wheels kind of don't tilt, but the car body does, which has the advantage of you don't ever have to deal with overcanting if the train track has both fast and slow trains. Slow trains usually meaning freight, because if it's a medium speed regional line, then it's usually fast enough that it's not going to be a problem. And the problem with tilting trains is they are expensive to procure. There aren't that many options, especially at high speed. And because at high speed, you're building a dedicated line usually, so it has high cant, and because of that square root situation, the effective cant efficiency there is reduced. And then they're also really expensive to maintain. The most aggressive tilt is something called a pendolino, and it's kind of dead-end technology, the tilting pendolino. There are weaker tilts that are still being produced, like there's Talgo that can get you to cant efficiency of 180 millimeters, and there's something similar in Japan. This is, I don't mean this, I don't mean E257, I mean Shinkansen trains, which is essentially called active suspension, which is not very tilty. It's again about 180 millimeters cant efficiency, and again, the maximum you should do it at very high speed. Let's say 300 kilometers an hour, the maximum you should be doing is 130. So it's not that big a difference. So you should probably not be getting tilting trains. Again, kind of a technological dead end. You can squeeze more out of them if there's a lot of low speed running, which people in the Northeast Corridor think there is, but let's in a sec go into why there isn't. And yeah, so Amtrak got tilting trains called the Avelia Liberty, a train which pushes the envelope in the sense of being, I believe, the first train with more than 180 millimeters cant efficiency. It's rated, I want to say, for 9 inches, that can do more than 250 kilometers an hour, because that's a pendolino speed, and the Avelia Liberty is supposed to run 300, and it's spec'd for more. Yeah, so about the TGV. Yes, so there is a tilting TGV that never actually saw full production because it was not necessary, and that technology is what went into the Avelia Liberty. The technology also, I need to add, has another drawback, which the Talgo does as well, which is it's a technology that's incompatible with having self-propelled cars, electric multiple units. So this is an electric multiple unit. You can see this because the lead car has windows. There are passengers in the lead car. Each car in Japan is self-propelled. You can also see it in the back. It's not like the locomotive is in the back. Isn't that? No. Japanese passenger trains do not have locomotives. I think there were 28 locomotives in the entire country for passenger service last time I checked. Japan, this is a country with tens of thousands of rail cars worth of passenger trains. Instead the cars are self-propelled, which means that you can have passengers in the front and back car, so it's more capacity. To the point that a single-deck Shinkansen has more seats than a double-deck TGV. The TGV technology is kind of the main power car product that exists. Talgo as well, but Talgo is much smaller. And their technology is Talgo and Avelia Liberty. Unfortunately, their tilt mechanisms are incompatible with electric multiple units, with EMUs. The EMU product that Alstom sells, it used to be the AGV, and maybe, I don't know if they're still doing that or if they're doing the stuff they inherited from Bombardier, the Zafira, but that's EMUs that don't tilt. So yeah, they've bought tilting trains, and we're writing schedules for trains that don't tilt. Because if they actually run as fast as they could, there would be so much more extra ridership that they would need more trains. The Villa Liberty, I must add, costs about double as much as the European high-speed train. Okay, grab nerd. Off topic. If Northern Virginia growth means getting electrification south of DC, does it make sense to start thinking about splitting more trips at Philly or New York? No. No, not really. Most trains would run Boston to DC. Some would continue. I guess there would be extra New York to Philly service. But then, okay, so west of Philly you go to, instead of DC, you go to into other places in Pennsylvania like Harrisburg, which some trains do today. North of New York, you would go to New Haven because that way you get the extra commuter trips, and then you go to Springfield. Okay. Yeah, the fact that so let's start with some things that need to be done. So first of all, the regional separation is stupid. You want to separate trains by class, by comfort on board the train, not by having separate trains, because frequency matters. And the faster the trains are, the more important that is. Why? Because the faster the trains are, the more important frequency is. You should really think of frequency, less so on scheduled intercity transport, I must add, but certainly on things where you kind of just go wherever, like regional trains or subways, you should really think of the trip time as maximum headway plus in-vehicle time. Passengers generally prefer to be on a moving train than waiting for a train, but average weight is half the total weight. The penalty for waiting over being on a moving train is a factor of between 1 and... No, not 1.5. 1.5 is a lot. Between 1.75 and 3 depending on study. So 2 is within the range. So just add maximum headway and the in-vehicle time, and that should be your effective time. So the faster the service is, the more important frequency is, and vice versa. Again, with scheduled intercity transportation, it's harder to say. I haven't seen anything that looks at the impact of frequency on ridership, and in fact, I have a little bit of sanity check suggesting it's not that important, in that if you try to model your ridership on Shinkansen, which has rather high frequency, and you try to use it for TGV ridership, the TGV will overperform that model. Now you can explain that in terms of fares, in terms of slightly higher average speeds, in terms of how maybe the TGV gets to little metro areas with fewer alternatives better, through service to the Grenobles, the Saint-Étienne's, the Viennes, like these like 200, 300, there's 100, 200, 300, 400, 500,000 metro areas that are much more common in France than in Japan. So you could explain that, but then you kind of anti-explain that with frequency. So the frequency probably, it matters, but only up to a point. And these are like trains that take, but maybe it's important because it's still important because on the main lines, like on the main city pairs, like Paris to Lyon and Paris to Marseille, the trains are pretty frequent, like once an hour, if the train takes 3 hours. So anyway, you do want a Sella, so you don't want this to be all on the same train, because that also simplifies your timetabling. Always simplify the timetabling. The more train types you need to think about, the worse everything is going to be. So please. So yeah. The plan should always be about integrating the regional and the intercity trains. Now, I'm going to be somewhat critical of people who sometimes participate here, and critical is like, not in the sense of, oh my god, you're stupid. No, you guys are not. But in the sense of, you guys made an error that I also made until I started looking at these timetables very carefully and realizing something. And the error is that often things like, is that often the best way to write integrated timetables is to have lines that are separate as much as reasonably possible. Reasonably means don't do quad track. So this is Boston to Providence is a 2-track line. It's a 2-track line with one 4-track overtake at Attleboro. The local lines on the overtake are not electrified because Amtrak is electrified, but current commuter rail service is not, which is silly, and they should electrify this. Should electrify some sidings here, the yard here, and just run fast EMUs for commuter rail service to reduce the speed difference between intercity and commuter trains. And if they do that, I thought they would need to build another overtake. They don't. Now, all of this is based on an assumption, which is that this is as far as the trains go, South Station. Now, there has been a plan, or a proposal, we should not call it a plan, called the North-South Rail Link. This is one such proposal. I think it's probably the most. This is the current one. It has some heavyweight backers, like former Governor Mike Dukakis and many local advocates, but it is not currently on the docket for what to do within the state's investment plan. Even the idea of electrifying all the commuter lines is at best on life support. The governor seems uninterested, unfortunately. Boston to Providence is probably going to happen, but probably at excessive cost because the MBTA is bad at procurement. And they're making some errors about how they're procuring the electric trains for it. And they don't seem interested in raising the platforms. So a lot of these stations between Boston and Providence have low platforms. They have 1 car or 1.5 cars worth of high platform, so that if you're in a wheelchair and you absolutely need to take the train, you can. But you can only be in 1 car. So at rush hour, people, forgetting wheelchairs for a second, people take forever to board because it's a bunch of steps. It's very narrow doors. If you've been to a European intercity train with steps, it's not like that at all. The European intercity trains with steps have wider doors and fewer steps usually. This is much worse. Mansfield is the busiest rush hour stop on the MBTA system. Not including rush hour, the busiest is probably Providence or Salem. Providence is much more intercity. Mansfield is just peak commuters. They have 4-minute waits here. For 4-minute dwell time that takes that long to board. So fix that. It costs basically nothing. I think recent projects for that at the MBTA have been like 20-25 mil per station, which is more than they should, but not vastly more than they should. It's like a factor of 1.5 premium over Berlin. So you fix this, and it turns out you can do Boston to Providence intercity in I think 26 minutes, 25-ish, 26 minutes, and then commuters in I think 45, 46, with just the transfer at Attleboro. Not the transfer, the overtake at Attleboro, and then there's a 3-track section here, and you're going to be okay. So you need a little bit of infrastructure here, but not that much. Mostly you just need integrated planning, and you need to keep assuming there's no north-south rail link, which is the current assumption in planning. The north-south rail link is not being seriously planned. I think it is unfortunate. I think they should be planning it in conjunction with electrifying all the commuter lines and running more frequency and building and raising all these low platforms and doing things like that. They will complete the surface improvements years before the north-south rail link opens. But since they're not doing north-south rail link, let's make lemonade out of those lemons. It means that the only thing you need to care about when you're doing intercity timetables here is Boston to Providence and a few branches. So there's a branch to, not Brockton, Brockton's a separate main line, it goes like this, and you don't need to care, but a branch to Stoughton that will eventually go all the way to Fall River and Bedford, but when it does, it'll have to be electrified because there's some environmentally sensitive areas here that the Army Corps of Engineers said, oh yeah, sure, you can build that, no problem, but it has to be electrified. Now, this is possible, there are going to be slots. Trains from Boston to Franklin can either go like this via the Fairmount line, or this is the Fairmount line, or they can go like this. Originally they went Fairmount to Franklin because this was a separate railroad from Boston to Providence. But the Boston to Providence corridor, like the corridor inherited from the Boston and Providence used to be the Northeast corridor, except in Boston called the Southwest corridor, I guess, because that's the direction from it. This is a faster route than this one. This route, it's not curvy or poorly made or anything, but they kept investing in this one, and then they built a bunch of infill stations here, so there's way more stations here. Like, this is a much more local route than this one. So currently the trains to Franklin almost always go like this, and we checked whether there is a problem to the point that the trains would need to be moved to this line. The answer is no, there isn't. They can keep going. There are slots for these trains. The speed difference between intercity and regional trains between Boston and Reedville is there, but it's not large to the point that I don't think you can quite run 5-minute frequencies between these three branches, Providence, Stoughton, and Franklin. Like, you can do 15 on each, but the spacing will be a little bit irregular, so maybe the longest gap is not going to be 5 minutes, it's going to be something like maybe 8 minutes. You guys know something? 8 minutes of, like, headway down to Hyde Park and Reedville. It's better than on the fucking subway in Boston. They have 10-minute headways, so to speak, on the red line. Yeah, no. No, the orange line, it could be rerouted, but honestly, no. You could, so for people who don't know, the orange line in Boston used to go elevated on what used to be called Orange Street and was since renamed Washington Street. This is why they call it orange. It went like this, and as I will never stop reminding people, black people, white people. They moved the line from here because they didn't like the L to here when they rebuilt the Southwest corridor. There was supposed to be a freeway here, so they created the right-of-way for a freeway and then changed their mind, thankfully, about building the freeway, so they put the orange line tracks there instead. And then they said that they would get something equal to or better than the orange line, which was BRT, called the Silver Line, or as locals call it, the Silver Lie. Boston investment priorities. That said, they can turn into a branch of the Green Line and connect it to a light rail. It requires very short tunnel extension. Most of the tunnel extension is something that already exists. But no, you don't need to even remove the orange line tracks from here. It's not that big a deal. Yeah, if you're trying to run a train, an intercity train every 5 minutes between Boston and New Haven, sure, but why would you do that? If you're running an intercity every 15 minutes, it can be done. Every 10, we haven't actually checked, but then I guess you just move Franklin back to Fairmount and you don't care anymore. And beyond that, just not happening. Rhode Island used the existing line. You need to fix this curve probably. I forget how much time it says. I want to say 30 seconds for very little cost because it's, again, easy construction. And remember the number 30 seconds, I'm going to talk about it in a bit. This is one way to transition from the line to I-95. There are many such possibilities. So if people here are being dicks, you can transition here, and that's fine. So this is something that's rather easy to get around NBs. So it's likelier to happen if they put their mind to it. This is just a cruise. I actually made sure that all of these curves are radius at least 4 kilometers, except the ones that they labeled with a lower number. This is like 300. This is what produces 300 kilometers an hour between Köln and Frankfurt. Elsewhere you could do 320 or something. These are two options. This involves building a new bridge. This doesn't. This is shorter. It's a difference of, I think, 2 minutes. You do it this way. I don't remember the numbers anymore. I want to say that this means that Boston to New Haven with this faster option is about 1 hour, maybe 59 minutes. Yeah, that's all doable. Now, it does require massive infrastructure investment in the building the bypass on 995, but that's something that's not actually that hard. Like, people here are being NIMBY, but it's possible to mollify some of their concerns, not all, but some. In fact, most. They have 3 concerns over the proposed alignment, which I think went like this. And this mollifies to them. They complained that the alignment would transition here, and this is environmentally sensitive. This stays in line here, no impact here. They complained that this would trash the marina. Yeah, sorry. And the third thing is they complained that the proposed alignment would go south of the freeway, so the noise would disturb the historic center of Old Lyme. This goes over. This goes on this version. This goes on this side. The noise from the train is going to be less loud than the noise from the freeway. So yeah, this is a couple bill, but it's billions of the hands, like 5 billion maybe. No tunnels, for example. Then there's New York to New Haven. This is the pain section. Not pain, but pain. No, please don't make it automated light metro. The whole point of the Green Line is it's Stadtbahn. It has a bunch of surface sections that feed into a common tunnel. It's called Stadtbahn in Germany. I've vlogged about this, I've blogged about this. I'm not going to talk much more about this. Philly has the same thing with subway surface. San Francisco in Muni Metro. I like calling it Stadtbahn because it's very common in Germany, but Boston actually invented that, and then Philly. And then 2 generations later, Köln reinvented that. San Francisco, I don't know when San Francisco built Muni Metro contemporarily with BART, if it was influenced with Boston and Philly, or also, or just Boston and Philly, or also Germany, I don't know. Anyway, this is a pain point because this is a curvy line. But when I say curvy, we've gone through this before. The curves are not that onerous. Most of the line was built to a 2-degree curve standard. So 1 degree is 1746, 2 degrees is half that, which is this, 873. This is not a high-speed section anymore, so we can do 150 millimeters cant efficiency. This is allowed in regulations in France. In Germany, I believe it's allowed by exception. It's not common, but you can do it on a non-tilting train if, in American regulations, by the way, the rule is not, it's not fixed, the maximum cant efficiency. The rule is that within the interior of the car, counting the sway, the maximum allowable lateral acceleration is 1.5 meters per second square, equivalent to 225, 230-ish millimeters. But in practice, the car body will sway to the outside of the curve. The kind of Talgo tilt system, or the active suspension system that I mentioned before, for the Shinkansen, essentially only corrects for that. It doesn't provide additional tilting. It's how it works without being onerously expensive to maintain. However, there are the only 2 vendors that will make you that. The Japanese system, which does not. Japanese vendors will not compete with other Japanese vendors for foreign high-speed rail contracts. So it's 1 vendor from the perspective of Gaijin, and and then Talgo is 1 more vendor, which does a lot of bespoke shit like power cars. Again, the Talgo system is incompatible with EMUs. The current trains are all low floor, so they would need to redesign for the higher floor heights, for the high floor heights of the Northeast Corridor. Don't do it. Do 150, and then 180 millimeters cant, which means that a slow train would be overcanted. But if it's on tracks that only commuter and intercity trains take, then that's fine. Like the commuter trains will not actually be that overcanted, or even not at all often. Certainly, times 2.2 is almost 160 kilometers an hour. Now, the maximum speed on the New Haven line in Connecticut right now is 75 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour, just by the state of the tracks. And let me see how to rephrase it correctly. They do maintenance very inefficiently. They finally got a track laying machine after years of people yelling at them over this, and they use it at 1/10 the productivity. The productivity of a track laying machine is about 1.5 kilometers in a nighttime closure period. Nighttime closure is about 5 hours when there are no passenger trains running, which is something like 3 effective hours of work. You can generally do 1.5 kilometers of that, maybe 1 kilometer. I'm saying slightly higher numbers than 1.5 kilometers, but slightly. So assume 1 kilometer, 1.5 kilometers per night, 500 meters an hour. These are very slow things because the machine will regrade the track for you. It will replace the rails, replace the sleepers. I don't know if it can replace the ballast, but it can wash the ballast. It can regrade the tracks for different cant. The cant angle is independent of the drainage angle, by the way. So you can have tracks that, let's say the curve, let's say you have this curve. This is a bypass then, probably. Let's say you have on this curve a bypass, so this bypass curve. So the outside curve, so the outside rail is to the north of the inside rail on each track. Here will be 2 tracks, so each of the 2 tracks. You can design this while still having a subgrade that drains north and not south, even though the northern rail is higher than the southern rail. The machine can do all of it. Well, I don't think it can lay new track at that speed, but if the track pre-exists, it can build it to that standard. It can rebuild it to that standard. You can do the entire line. It has 4 tracks in less than a year of nighttime closures. Right now they have weekend closures and they have off-peak closures. At no point are all 4 tracks that are available on the line used without obstruction. There's always a track that's obstructed. So they have to constantly change the schedule, so they always have conflicts. As I will never tire of telling people, on the New Haven line today, there are, count them, 13 different peak hour service patterns, not counting the branches. So it starts the train that hits Grand Central at 7:59 and ends the one that hits Grand Central at 8:56. There are 20 such trains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I missed one. No, I didn't. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. This train, if you look at the small print, is Fridays only. This will not operate Fridays, so these never operate at the same time. 20 trains per hour. 4 of them are on branches. Canaan, New Canaan, Danbury. And so 16 that don't go on a branch. 13 different operating patterns. Yeah, of course it's going to be impossible to timetable. Of course they're going to have 25-30% of timetable padding. The schedule, each train does its own thing. There's no repetition. The Swiss are lazy. The Swiss are really lazy. They plan 1 hour and repeat it all day. They don't like working very hard. The Americans like working very hard, very industrious nation. And because it's such hard work, they have to hire massive departments of schedule planners, and they still, because the schedules keep changing as the section of track that's under construction changes every time, they keep writing conflicts into the schedule. That's the problem. You need to have a schedule that will not have conflict. Yeah, we're actually, SEPTA is not that big of a problem because SEPTA mostly has 4 tracks on the Northeast Corridor and not that much need for express trains. Yeah, by the way, raising the platform level is not that salient, but it depends. So in Boston, to be clear, in Boston and in Philadelphia, raising the platform, also in New Jersey. So the 6 busiest commuter railways in America are LARR, Metro North, New Jersey Transit, Chicago Metro, These are roughly equal each in ridership. So New York has about 3 times the ridership of Chicago because 3 separate commuter lines. Number 5 and 6 are Boston and Philly. I never remember which ones are. I want to say that 7 and 8 are San Francisco and LA. I'm forgetting in what order. San Francisco is 1 line Caltrain. LA is many lines, but much weaker. They're much weaker though. Like San Francisco and LA. I think San Francisco plus LA is still less than Philly or Boston. Philly plus Boston is about the same as either Metro or each of the 3 in New York. So let's ignore Metro because I don't know it as well. Among the 5 that are relevant to us, so Boston, LIRR, Metro North, Jersey Transit, SEPTA. The DC has 2 networks, MARC to Maryland, VRE to Virginia. They both suck. Not a lot of ridership on either, because DC was not a historically industrial city. It was the capital. But it was a southern city. JFK quipped that it had the charm of a northern city and the economic efficiency of a southern city. The northernization of DC is very recent. This means it doesn't have many rail lines. It doesn't have as much history of commuting by mainline rail. It does have the largest post-war subway system in the United States. And as a result, the suburban commuter behavior that in New York and Boston and in Chicago, and to some extent Philly is a much more decentralized metro area, would be done by commuter rail. In Washington, it is done by metro, but by the subway. Now, the LIRR is entirely high platform. Metro North is entirely high platform with the exception of the Waterbury branch, which is its own thing. It doesn't really interact with anything else. You might tell. They don't actually have Waterbury trains here. They're so separate and they're so, like the line is so poorly built that I don't think they even run through a train. Maybe they have something here, I'm not even sure, but you can fundamentally ignore it. And even then I think they're building high platforms there. New Jersey Transit has many stations with low platforms. They are aware they have a plan to make all of them high platform at the cost of, I don't remember, it's several hundred million dollars per station. I want to say it is 20-something million. So given how long these trains are, it's actually reasonable. MBTA, same thing, has an ongoing plan for raising the platforms. In fact, they've been much more receptive to the transit matters message that they should raise all the platforms and to the one that they should electrify all of the lines. Electrification is foreign to the MBTA. They've never done it. So they need to be absolutely sure that it is viable. So they have consultants who are not very familiar with this trying to supervise, and the results aren't very good. But high platform projects, they've done before. They've done them in-house. They're used to doing them. So if we say do them more, great. Do more for them. They're used to that. It's within their toolkit. And again, the costs are not onerous. SEPTA has lower costs than both Jersey and the MBTA. I think much of this boils down to the fact that SEPTA runs shorter trains. SEPTA Regional Rail has about the same ridership as the MBTA Commuter Rail. Pre-corona, I think they were slightly higher, but they do this with a larger network, a shorter network in terms of the length of the lines. The lines are shorter, but I think there are more of them. So the trains are often very short. Not very short. I mean, normal European length, 4 4 American cars, 6 American cars, not 8 or 9. And often it's on single track line, so you only need to raise a single platform, not 2. In Philadelphia, it's often single digits per station. Again, shorter stations, often single track. So they actually do care about this, and they are doing. I think they should be doing it more aggressively, but they are doing it. Mark and VRE are hackfish. That's their big problem. Like regional or whatever, that's not the most salient thing. It's like at some point, talking about them is like talking about whether in the table of operations and equipment of the Russian army they have sufficient numbers, they have sufficient, what's it called, sufficient armored infantry. And they probably don't. But that's not the problem with the operations of the Russian army. Anyway, so they are, so anyway, my point about New York to New Haven is that the line is curvy, but honestly, it just has very low cant efficiency because Metro North is paranoid because of an experiment with self-suspension trains from the 50s that convince them that more than 3 inches cant efficiency is bad. Now they get trains that like these days don't have especially self-suspensions, but they're not trying to allow more. The roll in the United States is no more than 9 inches as felt by the passengers, which for a normal train, like a normal non-tilting train, is equivalent to 6 inches, like to 150 millimeters cant efficiency. And yeah, the train will suspend a little to the outside, that's normal. That's with current suspension. So what they should be doing is 180 millimeter cant, 150 cant efficiency. So the number should be 2.2. Instead, the cant is, it depends on the curve, but often it's like 4 inches or something like that, so 100 millimeters, and cant efficiency is, again, 75 or 80. So essentially the speed limit on every curve is off by a factor of something like 1.4 right now, for something that, again, can be fixed in a year of nighttime only closures. Some of the quality of track issues, same thing. Signals, New Jersey Transit is actually doing some nice things with improving their signals. There's one thing that they haven't done yet that would make things even easier, something about the signal system knowing what the train is, so it knows that the train is a fast braking passenger train and will let it keep going to closer to the train ahead of it, knowing that it can still brake. It essentially currently assumes that the trains brake at freight train schedule, at freight train rates, which are much slower, but that is something that they can resolve. It's something that so the capability of knowing what the train is something that the current signals are capable of doing. They haven't installed that yet because they don't need to for the current amount of traffic that they're running, but they can. It's not expensive, so it's something they should be investing in. But again, these are not stupid people. Like top management, sure, and the political appointees are total idiots, but it's something that the actual people doing the work know what needs to be done. To a large extent, they're already doing it. So I'm banging on. So I'm haranguing on the MBTA for not electrifying. That's a big thing that they need to be doing. Again, not that expensive because the line's fundamentally already wired. Just a little bit of completionism for like the little local only sections that are not. And get new rolling stock, but they need to do it anyway. The current MBTA rolling stock is falling apart anyway. Here, so I've drawn some, so you can see that I've drawn some really obnoxious bypasses. By the way, if you're wondering, if there's a radius here that is, any radius that is given a number is not on the current curve. So it's a curve that's being straightened, like with this alternative, which I'm kind of down on. This is more obnoxious, but doesn't involve trashing the city of Milford. Or it's on a bypass. This was something that I made for Devon so that you would be able to compute exact speeds. Yeah, so there's this. This is, so 1440, I mean, 2.07, I mean, usually the difference between the low and high speed regime is 200, so essentially this is a 200 kilometers an hour section. Forgetting the current speed, currently these are very tight curves. This one, for example, so right now I'm forgetting. I think most, I think it's like 3 degrees or something, so if it's 3 degrees and you go to the max, then it's 130. So yeah, you're actually gaining a fair amount of time building this. This is a tunnel. This is a curve straightening. This is a bypass. This is a bypass that's rather obnoxious to Darien. This is a bypass. This is a straight. This is, I wouldn't call it a straightening of the curve. It's taking two short curves and replacing them with one very wide curve. This bridge is obnoxious and slow. It's a movable bridge, and they are paranoid about speeds for the bridge. And then this is a bypass. Now, I think I've shown this before, and I want to make it very clear that right now we are staring at timetables without any of these bypasses. You can waive the bridge speed limits, some of which are real, some of which are not. New Haven to New York on an intercity, stopping at Stamford, is 57 minutes with timetable map. Now right now Amtrak does it in an hour 37. So you can cut 14 fucking minutes from this without building a single fucking bypass. Now, to be clear, you do need to do things. You do need to to run the track laying machine on the tracks. You do need to grade separate some junctions because there's no way the trains could do it reliably otherwise. So this junction needs to be not the radius 1 point. The one that says do not use is because it's this building is a stock. So do not use this. Much tighter, but still fundamentally okay. You do this, and yeah, I mean, these are annoying curves, but they're not the end of the world. This close to the city. And again, I want to make it very clear, 57 minutes if you just grade separate this junction so that the trains can cross without disturbing. Currently it's an hour 36, hour 37, an hour 30, 100, an hour 30. It's an hour high 30s, let's call it. The numbers change from timetable to timetable. They're not very consistent with Amtrak. That's the Acela. And so what this means is that, yeah, building this bypass is useful. We did a timetable analysis of both with and without it's, I think, 25 minutes slower. But also the trains can only go every half hour because these bridges are movable and they block pleasure boat traffic. And so there's an agreement with the Coast Guard that says that train traffic is restricted to every half hour in each direction. And if you run the trains fast, you will need more than that. You will need a lot more than that. Like, if it's an hour 40, an hour 45 Boston to New York, plus an hour 45-ish, an hour 40 New York to Washington, yeah, that's a train every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. And yeah, slowing it down by 25 minutes will mean there's less, but it means you still need like 3 long boys, not short boys. And even then, maybe 4 short boys. No, maybe 4 long boys an hour. So yeah, I mean, you need to either replace the bridge on site, which is what they're currently proposing, but if you're spending that much money on replacing the bridge, you might as well also connect it to fast tracks. Please. So, the upshot is that, other than this really long section, these bypasses, both with the fix for the junction, they have value, but it's not infinite value. It's much more important to think about timetable integration, to think about a large base of rolling stock, to think about restructuring the commuter rail the paradigm so that instead of having these 13 different stopping patterns, they have, just for trains to Grand Central, 2, local, express. That's it. Then you maybe just do locals, is what I keep arguing for with Penn Station, because you want to serve these stations. And the route to Grand Central is faster than the route to Penn Station by, I think, 5-ish minutes. So you want to, you want the express trains to go like this. In general, you want as few trains going here as possible because they will interfere with the intercities. So the locals are needed to serve these stations, but the expresses, why the hell would you do that? Especially since if it's an express train, let's think about it. The current express train pattern on Metro North is the trains make, at off-peak, they usually make all the stops between New Haven and Stamford, and then they run non-stop Stamford to Manhattan. Now, setting aside that I think that all of the commuter trains should be stopping at New Rochelle, which needs to be rebuilt for that anyway, for the grade side. Because New Rochelle right now is a local stop, I think, in one direction but not the other. and building it so that it's an express. So you see, this is in this direction it's an express stop. The platform goes both ways, but southbound it's a local platform, and these are bypass tracks. So you want to put the platform here, and it's fine. There are 5 tracks. You don't need 5. You need 4. And so do it while you're rebuilding this, I guess. And now I bring this up because because that way, why would you be interested in an express train to Penn Station for commuter trains? It's because you're trying to go from a train from the outer section, again, Stamford or points north, to Penn Station. But Stamford to Penn Station has intercities. Trains from beyond Stamford, even if they're just commuter suburbs, people can change at Stamford to an intercity, so you time it so that they can change. And it doesn't need to be a 0 penalty wait, it can even be a 5-minute wait, and that's fine, because these are very fast trains. So New York to Stamford, I think, is going to be something like half an hour. The 57 minutes that I mentioned before for intercities are split pretty evenly. I don't remember exactly how much, but it's pretty even. Like maybe this is 27 and this is 30, or the other way around. And the reason I don't remember is that the spreadsheet doesn't quite say that. The spreadsheet needs to be massaged a little bit for some extra constraints that I'm not mentioning, because we do have hard stop. Now, this does lead to certain problems. The biggest problem is Fordham Station. So I'm gonna show you for a moment. Oh yeah, they're actually showing this here. So, and I'm still gonna look for a schematic. All of you guys who know that I generally prefer geographic to schematic maps should feel free to mock me right now for going to a schematic instead of Google being okay. So these are also the correct colors: blue Harlem, green Hudson, red New Haven. So you do Grand Central to Harlem in Manhattan. Ignore the Hudson line; it's not as important right now. This is the Harlem line through the Bronx. You want to look at the names on the right, not on the left. So Ludlow is in Yonkers. So these are neighborhoods in the Bronx. And then, I guess Mount Vernon East is this one. And then there's a split. And unfortunately, the way the line is set up is there are 4 tracks, and all of these are local only platforms with very little extra space with which they can work to add any express platforms, except Wakefield. But Wakefield they could open a Wakefield station here, but it would not be cross-platform. The last station for this was Woodlawn, and Woodlawn is local. So the current paradigm is local trains do stop at Fordham. Not that many, because the main purpose, so this is off-peak, and peak it's very uncommon to stop, because Fordham, and I'm actually hoping to blog about this tonight, or let me amend, I'm hoping to have blogged about this 4 days ago, and so all of these stops in the Bronx are really useful for local for local traffic, so traffic within the Bronx or from the Bronx to Manhattan. So what you should be doing is fare integration. This means you ride a commuter train in the Bronx for the same fare as a subway train in the Bronx. From the Bronx to Manhattan, same thing. On the LIRR, which is something that the suburbanites don't like because they don't like sharing, but they'll live, Queens to Manhattan. So things like Jamaica to Manhattan. This is really important also because the subway between Jamaica, this is Home Depot, this is not a station, the station is here. The E train between Jamaica and Manhattan is overcrowded. It's hard to exactly tell how much because the usual reports on this measure crowding at the entry to the Manhattan core, and they jumble things up on the subway. That the lines that are busiest in Queens are not consistently the same tunnel. So this is 2013, I guess, so it's going to be before 2nd Avenue subway. That's not going to be important for Queens purposes. So the express tracks are the really overcrowded ones, and then the E takes the really crowded tunnel, 53rd, and the F takes the last one through 63rd, which is not shared with anything else. So this is kind of half service at this level. The other half of 53rd Street takes the M, which is local, so much less crowded. So measured by crowding here, this is not a terribly crowded entry point because like nearly half the trains are less crowded locals. But anyway, objectively speaking, the E and the F are very crowded. So if you let people take the L or R instead, that relieves a lot of crowding while also reducing commute lengths substantially. The current behavior in Eastern Queens is you ride a bus, and the bus is very crowded at peak hours and then kind of empty outside. You ride the bus to either Flushing at the end of the 7 here, or to Jamaica 179th, or to Jamaica Center, and then you take the E or the F or the Sun. Now, if instead you let people take the bus to one of these LIR stations, it's this is a shorter bus trip without needing to deal with the traffic of the secondary downtowns that are Flushing and Jamaica. And then so the bus is so you're gonna be on a bus for a shorter period of time, so for a shorter route length at higher average speed because you're gonna miss the most traffic jammed areas, and you'll have the faster LRR trains to get you to Penn Station or Grand Central through East Side Access. And so the benefits of that are very large, and there's going to be much more ridership out of that than in the suburbs. And the same thing in the Bronx. So all these stations in the Bronx need a lot of service, but that's on the Harlem line. Remember, we're talking Northeast Corridor. Northeast Corridor doesn't touch the Harlem line except a little bit, and that's where we're running into problems that I kind of wanted to vlog about. And I'm going to blog, as I said, I'm hoping to blog about it tonight. So the issue is that, yeah, for service to the city, I just spam local Harlem line frequency. But the New Haven line probably should not be making all these local stops. That's one option, but that slows down service to these areas. The other option is the New Haven line does what it does today, so the local trains only stop at Fordham and don't stop anywhere else. Now, Fordham is a very busy reverse commute stop. Now, but by the way, to make it clear, you don't need the New Haven line for service to Fordham. Like for service, because Fordham is mostly interested in city service, it's not going to matter. So the main thing is that Fordham is already a very busy reverse commute stop toward Greenwich and Stamford, and also White Plains. So, the connection to New Haven, I think, is kind of important. So, the New Haven line, rather, I'm going to say. So it is useful to stop there. The problem is that then you're suddenly sharing track with Harlem line locals, so the schedule is much more fragile. Again, if the station could be converted to express, it would be much nicer, but it can't, or not easily at least. And so the options include, okay, all New Haven trains make all the local stops. Sorry, all the New Haven line locals make all the local stops here. Problem, it's slow. Or all the New Haven line trains don't make any of these stops. Maybe you add it, so that's worse connectivity. Potentially you add a stop here, but that's not a very good thing for people for connections to Fordham because it is not cross-platform. Alternatively, you rebuild this junction so that people can go from Wakefield to New Haven, to the New Haven line, but as you might be able to tell, you're either trashing Wakefield and southern part of Mount Vernon, or you're building a tunnel, so $. Maybe you're moving the transfer point to Woodlawn, but Woodlawn is also a local only stop. I mean, there's probably more space there to turn it into an express, but I mean, it's not that busy a location. There are a bunch of options, not great, which is a problem. But whatever happens, everything should be doing it like within the local express or nothing. And of course, the express should not be doing this. because you don't want too many variations. You don't want to have to optimize multiple things. Optimize one timetable. So that's the issue north of New York. South of New York, let's see. This is a curve, but it's not that tight. In the same way that I talk about having to grade separate this no matter what else happens, it's called CP216 or shell interlocking. CP216 is the official term because it's 16 miles out of Grand Central, and 2 is the prefix for mainline New Haven trains. It's called shell interlocking colloquially because in the row shell. A couple hundred mil, and then now I'm gonna slag on Metro North for not caring that much about this. In contrast, New Jersey Transit, as I mentioned, they have some good ideas like raising all the platforms, or raising all the platforms that are at least somewhat busy, and and it's an ongoing project, and they are looking for more funding to complete. Likewise, New Jersey Transit knows that this is a really difficult junction between the Raritan Valley line and the main line, and they actually are trying to grade separate that. They think they want 300. It's a good deal. Do it. Hunter interlocking it's called, or Hunter Junction. Hunter Flyover, I think is what they did to grade separate it is. Please do it. Again, you want to eliminate these conflicts, because the problem is the right-of-way quality is a problem to an extent, but much more so. But remember, like, what you're gaining from like best case scenario on existing right-of-way versus this right-of-way that I've drawn, it's, I don't know, it's not even 20 minutes, I doubt it, it's maybe 17 minutes. And what you're gaining from between current practice and best practice on the existing right-of-way is about 40 minutes, maybe even more on the local trains, because and so the 40, so you're getting 45 minutes versus less than 20. Please just do this. And again, you need to really reduce timetable padding. You need to improve speed on curves. Again, New Jersey Transit has the right idea when they ask for this. Please, Fed, just fund this. You're funding other good things in Jersey. Please, this is a more important priority. Then here, there are some plans to build a bypass of the Elizabeth S-curve. It used to be that you could just straighten the curve, and then they built all this shit that would go in the way, and now it's not really possible. The speeds here are not onerous. It would be nice to be able to speed things up. I'm guessing it's 30... I think I computed it based on the proposed bypass that someone showed me on my Discord. And by someone, it's probably someone who's watching this right now. New Jersey Transit's big issue is money, but I mean, they're asking for the right things. It's just the feds haven't funded enough of that. So anyway, for this bypass, I've computed I think it's a 33-second gain, maybe 35 with pad. But look at this beautiful geography. Can you tell that it's going to be really easy to build through all of this? Or all of this? And don't forget, this is already a somewhat elevated line. So you're going to do elevated over elevated. And we know that is a giant cost premium, because that has been done in Tokyo when they built the Toku-Jukan line. Or Tokyo Ueno line is how it's called right now. Sorry, Ueno Tokyo line. And I'm already seeing the diagram that I used to look at, this one. So the way it used to be was that there was the Tokaido line that went like this, and then they built the Tokaido Shinkansen, and this led to taking the right of way. So they had to build this elevated over elevated, and this was very expensive. So we do know that there is a cost premium to that, and we know this is a constrained area. So either you're demolishing all of this. Union County College, I think, cost 55 mil 15 years ago to build. That could be an acceptable loss, but this plus this plus this plus this, maybe, but I don't see it. Just eat the speed restrictions, unfortunately. Then in Jersey, further in Jersey, This is kind of an annoying set of curves that can be fixed a little bit. I'm drawing the fix here, in fact, and Metuchen. There have been proposals for a bypass. Don't bypass, just straighten the curves. Again, because these are curves that are already medium speed, I want to say the current speed through them is 160 kilometers an hour. Can go up a little more. So this is trying to turn. You need to draw a curve radius. How about I do some actual work rather than bloviating right now and see what kind of curve radius this is. Let's see 2,000 kilometers. Like usually when I draw curves, they're in even, the radius are even numbers of kilometers. So this looks like this would be a single circle, so it's not 2. Let's see if it's 2.4. 2.4 is about what you need for 250. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, this looks like 2.4, right? Yeah, so this is kind of 2.4. Remember, we're not allowed to do 2.2. It has to be. Yeah, this is about 250 kilometers an hour. So it currently is 160. What they could do if they squeeze more speed out. This is south of New York. They have higher count efficiency. It's 5 inches, not 3. So this is. So you can't do the times 1.4 thing anymore. It's probably the current curve radius on this is probably good for 190, I'm guessing, 180, 190. So we're turning into 250 with some takings, but we're not trashing Elizabeth. We're taking a handful of, yeah, expensive, but a handful of suburban houses. Same thing here. Same thing here. Yeah, so 200, so we're doing a zone of 250. Again, this is little things that should not be too expensive. And yeah, so you keep going, mostly just use the existing right of way. It's so much more important. It's what I learned, that on the slowest section of New Haven, to just run the line better rather than to do bypass. Again, the bypasses are not nothing. The bypasses are going to turn a little less than an hour to probably 40 to 45 minutes, but it's, I mean, right now it's an hour 40 and it could be turned into an hour, and it's like that. It's not that it's the lowest hanging fruit, it's that 2/3 of the fruit are low hanging, for fuck's sake. And yeah, you can keep doing, again, you can keep doing this, you can keep looking for little things. I used to draw much bigger bypasses than I have here than I do now. Again, it's not that important. It's much more important to have consistent catenary and so on. This is a bypass. It's called used to be called the Great Circle Tunnel, and then they renamed it after Frederick Douglass to make sure to do like signal that it would be built. So it's the Frederick Douglass Tunnel. Really good $1 billion project. It costs 6 right now. Shouldn't have known for 6 with the money spent. Like, what am I gonna do? Oh, Metuchen is 105 and the neighboring are 110. Yeah, so they could probably squeeze a little more out of it, but the SL is 7 inches count efficiency already, and the current count is 5, I believe. So you can squeeze a handful extra speed out of it, but to be clear, a handful. Like maybe 150 and 110, I don't know. So anyway, yeah, that's my spiel about where we are right now. Not that I spend much more time talking about the north and the south, it's because I intended for us to work outside in, so Boston, then Philly, because Philly is Philly is easy because there are 4 tracks almost the entire way. It's like 3 tracks around here, and they don't really need the express trains. Like the traffic is not as high. In the same way that there should be fare integration so that you can just ride the commuter trains instead of slower subway trains in the city, you should have fare integration with intercities so that you ride the intercity Trenton to New York, Trenton to Philly, New Haven to New York, Boston to Providence, with the same, if you have a standing ticket, so a ticket without a reserved seat, if you don't have enough seats and someone else who paid for a seat has a seat, you fucking stand. It's like a 40-minute trip. People are standing longer trips than that. Rush hour on the subway. Deal. And if that is what it's done, then Boston to Providence is not the issue, but New Haven to New York and Trenton to New York are, because it means that you can use that to take away traffic from the commuter trains. This is really important because Right now, there are, as I mentioned, 20 trains per hour on the New Haven line to New York. Now, there's going to be more demand when they open to Penn Station. Not infinitely more demand, it's a reverse branch. The LIRR's East Side access has not led to any increase in ridership because they don't have enough trains. And they split the frequency, but remember, we're talking about a future with fewer stopping patterns, so the frequency split is like 5 versus 10 minutes, not 30 minutes versus an hour. So, 5 versus 10 minutes, if the trip is half an hour or 45 minutes, is not that big a deal. So let's say they need 24. Okay, how are you going to do these 24 with So the idea is that maybe you have 6 intercities per hour to New Haven, and then 2 go to Springfield, 4 go to Boston, 2 stop in London, so that they get space from let's say that when they leave New York 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes after the hour every hour, and then let's say something like the 20 and the 50 go to Hartford and Springfield. This means it needs to be electrified. And the 10 and the 40 stop in New London. Go to Boston and stop in New London, so that delays them by 5 minutes relative to the trains at 0 and 30, which don't. That kind of changes the spacing to an even 15 minutes for the system. And New London, because it's a peripheral stop, it's not going to make a big difference on the stopping there. And because it's also this section is still 7% padded, but it's a dedicated high-speed line, there is room for recovery. So it's not going to screw the timetable too much. So you can keep the 7%. Just to put things in perspective, JR East, which does not have hermetically dedicated tracks, but close to it, pads 4%. 7% is Switzerland, which is much more interconnected. So really, the important thing is to run faster on curves using technology that exists, reducing the padding, where the signaling needs to be upgraded, upgrade the signaling, but for the most part, it's small upgrades. Like, you don't need to install new things because the existing signaling is called Axis, and it's a variant of European Train Control System Level 1. Essentially, they took ETCS Level 1 and removed the E from it, because it's not as a multi-vendor, I don't think, but it has the same capabilities, and the capabilities do include who am I? Or let's do multi-aspect breaks. So like you don't need to space the signals at a breaking distance. You can space them closer and break over multiple signal blocks. Like all the things that made LZB in Germany powerful. So the signals are already capable. They need very minor upgrades. You upgrade the stations, but that's on the Providence line and on SEPTA. New Jersey Transit is already doing the upgrades, but on the Northeast Corridor, they're all high platform already. I think maybe Jersey Avenue isn't, but the rest are. It's the more we're looking at it, the more important it is to do things like junction fixes. This is also something in Philly, by the way. This junction is a problem and needs to be grade zapped. That's going to be annoying. This is a fun S-curve. Just straighten this. And yeah, it means losing some industrial things. I never remember if it means 0 residential takings or residential takings. I guess these are residential takings in areas that are very industrial and therefore probably not the most choice real estate. Not to judge people's preferences too much. The upshot, so again, it requires some concrete, but it's mostly being really good about the electronics to get to the point. As I said, the low-hanging fruit on, let's say, New York or New Haven, are the majority of the fruit. Like, you don't need to be being a giraffe is kind of nice, but most of the food does not require you to have the neck of a giraffe. It's not like, 1/3 of the food is like, no, this is like 2/3, 3/4. And so that's what we're figuring out right now. And again, this is the section that's the slowest right now. This is where you need concrete. Because the curves here are actually tighter. The trains run faster on them already. Essentially, this is owned by Amtrak, so Amtrak prioritizes speed. This is owned by Metro North / Connecticut DOT. They prioritize bullshit. Not even capacity, just bullshit. And yeah, here it's already okay. They need to do some changes that are like already they're already asking for, and they're probably going to get them. So this is not the problem section. Yeah, this is where we are now. I can't tell you how long it's going to be in New York to DC because we're, as I said, doing it north to south, not outside in. So we're doing New York earlier than I thought and Philly and DC later than I thought, but I expect that it's going to be an hour 40, an hour 45 each half. No, but bear in mind, an hour 40, an hour 45 is with all the fixes. Without the fixes, it's 2 hours. But I mean, like New York to Boston in 2 hours without being giant things on Metro North territory, I didn't think it was possible, and it looks like it is. So anyway, that's where we are right now. I just wanted to give an update, a recorded update on like what happened in November. And if people have questions in the next 5 minutes, I will take them. And as I said, 5 minutes, 900 is a hard stop. Let's see what's going on with the line. What's the intended scope of questions? Things about Northeast Corridor related timetabling. And I guess Biden era investment. As I said, the more I'm looking into it, the more I'm convinced that they need to spend money, but it's much more important to coordinate the timetables, to coordinate where the money is being spent at different locations in the Northeast Corridor, or the Northeast Corridor at once, or things like that. Potomac Yard only has one exit, not two. Sorry, I'm the generation that face palmed rather than doing the skull emoji. Yeah, sorry that I'm a boomer. I also have at this point positive views of Keir Starmer, Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron, Olaf Scholz. Yeah, as I said, boomer. Are there other questions? Yep. Yeah, Philly's remarkably easy for the timetabling, just because there's much more infrastructure there, and not that much demand, unfortunately. Partly it's because the system sucks, but it's mostly because Philly city center is not as strong as downtown Boston, for example, or San Francisco, DC. Like comparable. Do we have the time in mind when this will be done? I have no idea. Like a lot of the timetable stuff can be done on current infrastructure, but not all of it. Especially the annoying bit is the grade set here, and I don't think they've started design, so we're talking optimistically late 20s, early 30s, unfortunately, because a lot of the rest can be done earlier. Sure, thanks, Sonny. I'm converting some stuff to Metro. I mean, yeah. I don't really see that point. I mean, if everything is fair integrated, it's not that important. Like, it's not really a thing that they do in Berlin, for example, or in Paris. Yeah, so anyway, thank you all for watching, especially since I started rather late. I will see you either Saturday. Yeah, have a great week. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. And then we'll see you in the next one on Saturday or on Tuesday. Topic TBD. Which day it's going to be TBD. So thank you, and ciao ciao.